Welcome to Bold Talk series where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Epi Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Alex Romanovich, CEO of GlobalEdgeMarkets. Alex, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk series. How are you, man?
Thank you so much, Epi. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's been a long time, so we are way overdue.
We certainly are.
So, Alex, let's take us back when you look back at the earliest stages of your career. Was there a single defining moment where you realized you wanted to work at the intersection of global business, technology, and transformation rather than follow a more convenient path?
Great question. And, my career, my career goes back to being actually an engineer, a microprocessor engineer for IBM of all the places. And that's how I started my career. I had an electrical engineering degree, computer science degree from Brooklyn Polytech. And, there was no, coming from a family of engineers, there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to be one as well. But after working for 3 years in the tech space, in the labs of IBM and Intel, working with, at that time, of course, in the 80s, at some of the advanced technologies, the Intel microprocessors going into IBM computers, I decided that after 3 years, I actually am bored by all of this. And I'm bored by, not bored by technology, but bored by the monotonous, process oriented, not so automated environment that is not allowing me an opportunity to see the world, to meet interesting people, to drive business, to grow business. And I decided to redeploy and become a sales and marketing person at IBM as well. Took advantage of great sales education for about 9 months. That was the program they had at that time. And I'll say that that's probably the best sales education and marketing education one could get at the time. And that's how I launched my career into sales and marketing and business growth and business development without actually losing the edge on technology. So I always stayed at the intersections of marketing, business development, and technology. And
Yeah.
of course, then I continued with other companies like Bertelsmann, a big German media conglomerate, EPAM Systems, American Express, and a few others. And then a slew of smaller companies, startups, and then eventually my own company called GlobalEdgeMarkets, which is a business management consulting firm that advises companies globally on not only growth and expansion, but also on how to leverage the global trends, how to leverage new technologies, innovations to advance their business.
Yeah. Well, going back to your at that time when you were in IBM, it's amazing where you have an organization where it allows you to change pretty much change the whole entire skill set and go for something and enable you that. So that's truly amazing and giving you such a great training that was the beginning of this new world that you were embarking to. Now, from the early days now to early social media era to now leading global edge market, what was that the most surprising lesson you learned about how fast innovation can shift what clients truly value today?
That's a great question. I think the biggest revelation I had was when I ran an agency on Madison Avenue in New York City called Social to Be, which then evolved into Global Edge Markets. And it was incredible to see how many clients in marketing advertising space also wanted to not stay with the service, not stay with the service offerings they offered, but also wanted to move towards a product. But of course, building a product and launching the product into global markets or even regional or local markets is a very different undertaking. And this is a great testimonial and great test of your ability to productize a service offering or to actually take a problem, define the problem, and solve the problem with a product, with a platform. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges that a lot of folks have right now, especially startups, is first, they have to solve the problem. They cannot continue, to be a me too. I mean, look at what's happening with artificial intelligence. Everybody in the world is having some kind of an AI solution. Everybody has some kind of an AI product, whether the product solves or does not solve a real problem. And I think the biggest challenge and the biggest value that one can bring to the table is to actually start with solving a problem. And then, of course, then you can apply the tech, you can apply whatever technologies. It could be AI, it could be automation, it could be writing code, it could be developing a platform, integrating a platform, or something like this. But you have to solve the problem first.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more than that because I talk to so many entrepreneurs and founders, and I can tell you the big difference is the one who truly figure out what problem they're very clear what problem they're solving. They're going to the root cause of the problem. Second, by doing that, they have a very clear uh, product market fit and go to market strategy, then there's no confusion. So clarity, I always say clarity is power. And the faster you realize that, okay, well, I need to be very clear in terms of the problem that I'm solving, you're really just going to go around and then trying to like me too, like you said, me too. Like, and I think what you see today, you see this byproduct of all these people are chasing these ideas, this technology. They're just giving you like the surface. They're not going deep enough to addressing the problem.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, with Global Edge Markets, positions itself as a bridge between global ambition and a local precision. Can you tell me a bit about a time when understanding a local nuance completely changed the direction or success of a global expansion strategy?
Of course, I actually talk a lot about this on almost on a daily basis. I don't think there is a business today in the world that can be considered only local. Even a small restaurant for ramen somewhere near an Osaka train station is not local anymore, right? Because of the supply chains, because of the customers that might be stopping by and enjoying the local tastes, but maybe adapting or demanding something or what have you. So I can't think of a local business today that will be able to survive without understanding some of the regional and even global trends. Take a look at what's happening right now with tariffs. Look how many local businesses that were sourcing products from all over the world, and maybe let's say China or Vietnam or something like that. And now all of a sudden, they have to avoid tariffs. Now they have to potentially change their strategies and become hyper local or become hyper regional. But then they realize that the costs are very prohibitive and they'd rather pay more in tariffs or maybe cost wise, it works out that way and continue to do business that same way. So I can't think of, I'll be honest with you, I can't think of a business today, whether it's a small food shop or it is a supplier, a distributor, a plumber who might be sourcing parts or getting parts from the local distributor who might be then sourcing those parts globally, internationally, locally, regionally, and so forth. That's why I don't think that a local business can survive without really understanding some of the global trends and some of the global, even geopolitical trends in some cases, and how they impact them and what should they be ready for? How can they possibly assess their viability or assess their ability to thrive to thrive or to grow within this environment? And same is true for the global businesses, right? There are a lot of international companies that we work with, for example, that come to the United States, and the first thing they ask is, "How do we do business in this particular region?" Right? And then sometimes they don't realize that to do business in the United States, you have to understand how to do business in each particular state. United States is not this uniform, one big, equally distributed or equally adapted type of environment. You can do business in Texas, but it's not the same as doing business in New York City, or it may not be the same thing as doing business in North Dakota or Minnesota or something like that. So you have to understand those trends. You have to adapt to those trends and you have to really merge or you have to understand the global and the local issues.
Yeah. And when companies come to you, Alex, for supply chain strategy, what's the most surprising inefficiency you uncovered that was quietly eroding profitability, and how did fixing it change the game for them?
That's a great question. I think planning and I think at this point simulating using some of the tools and in some cases some of the advanced AI tools and classification tools and optimizing their supply chains, understanding the routes, understanding the laws, understanding the regulations. Those are the pieces that one has to have. And a lot of great companies in the supply chain space and in export import space have that capability, have that skill, have those resources. But I think you have to almost plan ahead. You almost have to plan for some of the uncertainties that we're seeing right now in the market, where the products are being delivered or manufactured or designed faster. The competition is becoming a lot more fierce, and planning and self-assessment, constant self-assessment, is absolutely necessary to be able to not only survive but to thrive and to grow. So I think self-assessment, optimization of your processes, simulation, those are things extremely important. And that's even before you get into what kind of automation we could be looking at, partnerships, options for the supply chain links, and so forth and so on. I'm not going to get into other issues like inventory management for a lot of the e-commerce and manufacturing companies and so forth. But you have to self-assess, you have to automate, and you have to take a pulse of the market on the almost on the weekly basis.
Yeah. Uh, Talking about tariffs, so tariff engineer can sound highly technical, but in practice, it's often about creativity and foresight, and this is where you're bringing that value. Can you share a story where a smart tariff strategy not only cut costs, but actually reshaped a company's competitive position in a market?
Absolutely. I think I'm not going to name any names to protect the innocent, but I will use some of the use cases in this particular case. Tariff engineering is really nothing more than a fancy name for taking a look at your abilities to reconfigure or to reclassify some of the products that you might be importing or trading with, whether you're an e-commerce company, or you're a manufacturer, you're, assembly company, and what have you. And you could be importing a product from China, for example, or Vietnam, and that product could be making its way all the way to the United States through Canada or through Mexico, for example. And not a lot of people understand this, but that part could be traveling back and forth as it assembles, as it evolves, if you will, in the overall manufacturing and supply chain. So if you look at the way the tariffs are set up right now, the export and import tariffs are set up right now, that part could be making its way through 2 or 3 or even 4 different tariff checkpoints. And every time it crosses the border, for example, the tariffs may have to be paid. Now, classification means that this particular part may be classified as, whatever, aluminum or piece of plastic or something along those lines. Again, I'm simplifying those things just to illustrate, and reclassifying that part or classifying it better or smarter could yield some results. And also changing the import route could also result in other savings, right? So maybe, and this is before you start looking for local manufacturers or local assembly companies or something like that. Okay, that's almost the last resort if you don't want to change your suppliers, right? So this is a very vivid and very clear use case where you could do a couple of things. You can look at the classification of the parts. You may even impact your manufacturing process or your assembly process and say, you know what, maybe I don't need aluminum. Maybe I could do away with different part, a different mechanism. I may even have to redesign something in my manufacturing or something like this, and that will save me so much money, right? So after you do all of those things, after you look at the classifications, if you look at the routes, if you look at your own manufacturing or assembly process, after you look at the local suppliers, you can potentially save quite a bit. You could save up to 15 to 20% as a cumulative type of exercise, cumulative type of savings, right? So it's very important to build your business with that level of flexibility into the future.
Now, what do you think the leaders still underestimate the opportunities hidden in this complexity of tariffs and regulation, supply chain?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
What do you think most of leaders, decision makers still underestimate the opportunities that is hidden in this complexity of tariffs and regulations and supply chain and so on?
I think it's a great question. I think maybe it's not a matter of underestimating their capabilities, because every business has an infinite number of capabilities, but you have to have the willpower to make certain decisions. And that willpower is going to have to come from the management team to maybe change the manufacturing process, to maybe change the sourcing strategies, to maybe look at the alternate supply chain links and supply chain routes, and maybe even deploy new technologies, right? Maybe invest into new technologies. So those types of things should not be underestimated. And the level of ingenuity, the level of innovation, the demand for that innovation is what's going to make the businesses successful. So it's the willpower. It's surrounding yourself with a lot of innovative staff members and support staff that, and surfacing those ideas, using the innovative approaches, using new technologies, even AI for that matter, that can potentially, reclassify smarter, look at the optimization links smarter and faster, and so forth. Not being afraid to innovate, not being afraid to with those types of innovators, and I think that's what's going to make or break the business in the, especially in that field, in the field of export, import, in trade, in manufacturing, in supply chain.
Yeah, 100%. You got to be in the right room, got to be the right people in order to have that intelligence, that what's happening, the trends, and so on. Alex, this is a short format conversation. I would love to take another great conversation with you for next time, maybe a longer format. What does the word bold mean to you personally?
Bold.
Yes.
I think, bold means not being afraid to embrace something new. Instead of paying attention to how many people the markets are going to get rid of, or fire or what have you, I think embracing something new, embracing innovations and working with innovations and adapting their businesses, that's what's bold today. And I think not being afraid to do so, maybe investing into your own people, right? More. And instead of, just replacing them with automation, or many people suggest that, we will be replacing people with robots soon. I think before we get there, and before we really replace the existing business environment with robots, I think what's bold is to adapt, to work with the same team, to educate and train the same team, invest into the same team, and try to be as innovative as possible, whether it's AI or new systems or new ways of doing business or new partnerships, or even going local when you're global, or the other way around, going global when you're local. That's bold.
Love it. And that's certainly it is. If the company like IBM did not invest in you, look at you are where you are today. And that's what is more required. If you only invest in robots and you're not investing in people, that future doesn't look bright to me. So very well said, Alex. And that's also boldness for you. You truly showed it. You from engineering to a marketer, now like working in the supply chain. That is true boldness, true transformation, and truly looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for joining me. And until that time, take care, be great, and be bold always. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, Epi. Thank you for that opportunity.